Emeka thought he could destroy her reputation forever. And that night, at the company gala, he did exactly that, calling his wife lazy, worthless, a mistake, a burden in front of 300 people.
I don't have a wife at home. I have a liability. 3 years. No job. No contribution. Just excuses. She is lazy. And somehow I'm the bad guy.
You mean the home where I sit on the couch doing nothing all day? The home? You told them I haven't worked in 3 years. You didn't tell them why. Should I tell them, Emeka? Should I tell everyone why I left my job? Should I tell them I spent the first 2 years of our marriage taking care of your mother when she had cancer? Should I tell them that your mother died in my arms?
The video went viral. Over 3 million people watched her humiliation. He was certain he'd broken her for good. But 2 years later, when Emeka walked into that emergency board meeting and saw who was sitting in the CEO's chair, his blood ran cold. The lazy, worthless wife he'd publicly destroyed. She was now his boss. What happened in that first meeting will leave you speechless. By the end of this story, you'll understand the true meaning of karma. Quickly, hit that like button and subscribe right now because you do not want to miss how this plays out. Let's begin. The morning started like every other morning in the Okafor household. Ijeohma woke at 5 a.m. to the sound of her phone alarm, carefully turned it off before it could wake Emeka, and slipped quietly out of bed. Her feet touched the cold floor, and she padded silently to the kitchen to start breakfast. By 5:30 a.m., she had eggs frying, bread toasting, fresh orange juice squeezed. The coffee maker gurgled, filling their small flat with the rich smell of brewing Arabica, the expensive kind Emeka insisted on, even though Ijeohma drank cheap tea to save money. She heard Emeka's phone ring in the bedroom, his work phone, then his voice suddenly bright and cheerful in a way it never was when he spoke to her. "Good morning, sir." "Yes, sir. Of course, Mr. Adeyemi." Ijeohma plated the eggs carefully, whilst arranged everything on the tray the way Emeka liked. Fork on the left, knife on the right, napkin folded in a triangle. "Absolutely, sir. My wife and I are very much looking forward to the gala. Yes, she'll be there. I wouldn't miss the chance for you to meet her." Meet her? Emeka never wanted the CEO to meet her. Emeka barely wanted his own colleagues to meet her. She carried the tray to the bedroom. Emeka was already up, buttoning his shirt, his phone tucked between his shoulder and ear. "Yes, sir. Family is very important to me. My wife is my rock. See you Saturday." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." He looked at Ijeohma standing in the doorway with his breakfast tray. No thank you. No good morning. Just an irritated glance. "You're coming to the gala on Saturday," he said. Not a question. A statement. Ijeohma carefully set the tray on the bed. "I thought you didn't want me at your work events." It had been over a year since he'd invited her to anything. The last time he'd introduced her as my wife, Ijeohma, to exactly 2 people, then spend the rest of the night telling her to just stand there and don't embarrass me. "I don't," Emeka said bluntly, picking up his fork and starting to eat without waiting for her to leave, without inviting her to sit. "But Mr. Adeyemi specifically asked about you. Said he looks forward to meeting spouses. Said it shows stability, family values." "So you want me there because I'm up for senior vice president," Emeka interrupted, talking with his mouth full. "And the CEO is old-fashioned. He likes to see that his executives are family men, settled, stable, yes, responsible." He took a long drink of orange juice, leaving a ring on the wooden tray Ijeohma had carefully polished yesterday. "So, yes, You're coming. You're going to smile. Stand next to me and keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about your useless online degree. Don't mention that you don't work. Just be quiet and look presentable. Can you manage that? Of course, she said, quietly. Good. Emeka stood, leaving the half-eaten breakfast on the bed, the tray tilted and threatening to spill. Wear something nice, not that old dress you always wear. Something that makes you look like you actually belong there. He walked past her to the bathroom, leaving the bedroom door open, the mess behind him for her to clean up. Ijeohma stood there for a moment, looking at the breakfast she'd woken up early to make, now abandoned and cooling. So looking at the tray she'd have to wash, looking at the bed she'd have to make. And despite everything, despite the coldness and the casual cruelty, there was a tiny spark of something in her chest. He needed her. Even if it was just for show, even if it was just to impress his boss, he needed her by his side. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a new beginning. She had no idea how wrong she was. Ijeohma sat at the small desk squeezed into the corner of their bedroom, staring at her laptop screen in growing horror. One moment she'd been typing her assignment, 20 pages analyzing corporate restructuring strategies, 2 weeks of work, worth 40% of her final grade, and the next moment, the screen had flickered once, twice, and gone completely black. No, she whispered, pressing the power button. Nothing. She tried the charger in different outlets. Still nothing. Panic rose in her throat. The assignment was due tomorrow. She'd been so careful to save it to the cloud every few paragraphs, but she needed a computer to access it, to finish it, to submit it. She looked around the bedroom. Emeka's clothes from this morning were scattered across the floor, his shirt draped over the chair, his pants in a heap by the closet, his socks balled up and tossed in the general direction of the hamper, but missing by 2 feet. His wet towel from his morning shower was still on the bed, leaving a damp circle on the duvet. His coffee cup from breakfast sat on the nightstand, a brown ring staining the wood she'd polished just last week. Ijeohma had already picked up after him twice today. She'd cleaned the kitchen after he'd made himself breakfast and left flour on the counter, eggshells in the sink, the milk out on the table. She'd gathered his newspapers from the living room, where he'd scattered them while watching the news. She'd folded the clothes he'd left in the dryer for 3 days, and now this. Emeka walked into the flat, loosening his tie, his briefcase in hand. He stepped over his own dirty clothes on the bedroom floor without even seeing them, the way he always did. Emeka, thank God you're home, Ijeohma said, trying to keep the panic from her voice. My laptop just died completely, and I have this huge assignment due tomorrow. So, buy a new one, Emeka said, without looking at her, dropping his briefcase on the bed right next to the wet towel. I don't have money for a new laptop right now, she said carefully. But I was thinking maybe I could use yours, just for tonight. I'll be really careful, I promise. I just need to finish this assignment and no. The word was flat, final, like a door slamming. Ijeohma blinked. What? I said no, Ijeohma. Emeka turned to face her, pulling off his tie and dropping it on the floor next to his shirt from this morning. I use my laptop for serious business. I have client presentations on there, confidential files. I can't have you playing around with it. I'm not going to play around with it, Ijeohma said, her voice shaking slightly. It's my master's degree. It's my assignment for my strategic management class. I've been working on it for 2 weeks and your master's degree? Emeka actually laughed as he kicked off his shoes, leaving them in the middle of the floor where Ijeohma would trip over them later. Ijeohma, you better give up on chasing breeze and face what life is about. He pulled off his shirt, wadded it up, and tossed it toward the hamper. It landed on the floor 3 feet away. You have to work to be able to earn, he continued, now walking to the closet in just his undershirt and work pants. Real work. Not these online classes that lead nowhere. Not these useless assignments that don't put food on the table or pay bills. Education is an investment, Ijeohma said quietly, her voice barely steady. You used to understand that. You used to support. I supported you when I thought you'd finish quickly and get a real job, Emeka interrupted, pulling his laptop bag from the closet. It's been 3 years, Ijeohma, that 3 years of just one more class and almost done, and this will help me get a better job. And what do you have to show for it? He walked to the closet and placed his laptop bag on the top shelf, the shelf Ijeohma couldn't reach without dragging over a chair. Nothing, he answered his own question. You have nothing to show for it except excuses. What am I supposed to do about my assignment? Ijeohma asked, hating the way her voice sounded. Small, desperate, begging. Emeka shrugged, unbuckling his belt. That's your problem, not mine. You chose to pursue this useless degree instead of getting a real job. You deal with the consequences. He tossed his pants on the floor and walked toward the bathroom in his boxer shorts. You used to say I was smart, Ijeohma said to his back, her voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. Which is new. You used to say I could do anything I set my mind to, that my education mattered. Emeka stopped in the bathroom doorway. For a moment, Ijeohma thought he might turn around, might remember the man he used to be. The man who'd held her hand at graduation and told her how proud he was. The man who'd helped her study for exams and quizzed her with flashcards and celebrated every good grade. That was before I realized you'd use education as an excuse to avoid real life, Emeka said without turning around. I am tired, Ijeohma. I have an important meeting tomorrow with actual paying clients. Some of us have actual jobs. He walked into the bathroom, leaving the door open. Ijeohma watched him brush his teeth and spit in the sink without rinsing. Watched him wash his face and leave water all over the counter. Faye watched him use the toilet without flushing, the sound echoing in the quiet flat. She would clean it all tomorrow morning, like she always did. And don't even think about sneaking my laptop while I'm sleeping, he added, pulling the covers up. I'll know if you touch it. The room went dark except for the glow of Ijeohma's dead laptop screen reflecting in her eyes. Ijeohma sat at their small kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. Around her were her textbooks, her research articles printed out and highlighted, her notes from 2 weeks of work. She began writing. Page 1, page 2, page 5. Her hand cramped. She shook it out and kept writing. Page 10, page 12, page 15. She drew diagrams by hand, created charts with a ruler and colored pens, wrote out every citation in perfect APA format. 20 pages of analysis, argument, and research. Every word in her neatest handwriting, because this assignment needed to be readable, professional, perfect. By 3 a.m., she was done. Her hand felt like it might fall off. Her eyes burned. Her back ached from hunching over the table. But it was done. She looked toward their bedroom door. Inside, Emeka was sleeping peacefully, his laptop safe on the high shelf, his sleep undisturbed by any thought of his wife sitting alone in the kitchen, writing by hand like it was 1985. Ijeohma cleaned up quietly, washed the coffee cup she'd used, put away her books, turned off the light. She didn't sleep. There was no point. Emeka's alarm would go off in 2 hours, and she needed to make his breakfast. Ms. Okoro, her professor, Dr. Adebayo, looked at the handwritten assignment Ijeohma had just submitted, concern evident on her face. Hey, is everything all right? Why is this handwritten? Ijeohma forced a smile, the same smile she'd been practicing for 3 years. The smile that said everything is fine when nothing was fine. Technical difficulties, she said. My laptop died. I hope it's still acceptable. Dr. Adebayo's concern deepened. Of course it's acceptable. Your work is always excellent, Ijeohma, but... She looked at her star student more closely. You look exhausted. Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine, Ijeohma lied. Just busy, you know how it is. But Dr. Adebayo had taught for 20 years. She knew what exhaustion looked like, what sadness looked like, what a woman slowly breaking looked like. Ijeohma, she said gently, if you ever need to talk about anything, my door is always open. Ijeohma nodded, not trusting her voice. If she spoke, she might cry. And if she started crying, she might never stop. Thank you, Dr. Adebayo. She left quickly before the tears could fall. That night, she made Emeka his favorite dinner, jollof rice with chicken, fried plantains, coleslaw. She served it to him with a smile. He ate without thanking her, scrolled on his phone throughout the meal, and left his plate on the table when he was done. Delicious as always, he said absently, already walking away. It was the first compliment he'd given her in 6 months. Ijeohma held onto it like a life raft. 3 days later, Emeka told her about the gala, and Ijeohma, desperate for any sign that he still valued her, even a little, said yes. Ijeohma stood in front of their bedroom mirror, looking at the dress she'd chosen. It was the same dress from their wedding reception 5 years ago, a simple navy blue cocktail dress she'd bought from a department store sale. She'd altered it twice, once to take it in when she'd lost weight from stress, once to update the neckline to look more modern. It still looked cheap. She'd spent 2 hours on her makeup, watching YouTube tutorials on her cracked phone screen. Her hair was styled as best she could manage without money for a salon. Her shoes were the only nice pair she owned, black pumps with a scuff on the left toe that she tried to cover with a marker. Emeka walked into the bedroom, adjusting his cufflinks. His tuxedo was brand new, custom made, probably cost more than Ijeohma's entire wardrobe combined. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. That's what you're wearing, he asked. Ijeohma's stomach dropped. Yes, it's my nicest dress. I altered it last week to make it more current and... It looks old, Emeka said bluntly. Everyone at this event will be in designer gowns. You're going to look like you shopped at a second-hand store. I did shop at a second-hand store, Ijeohma said quietly. 5 years ago, when we couldn't afford anything else, you said you liked this dress. I was being polite. I don't have anything else, Emeka. I haven't bought clothes in 2 years. If you wanted me to have something better, you could have. Could have what? Emeka interrupted. Given you money to buy a dress for one event? Ijeohma, some of us are trying to save for our future. Some of us can't just spend money on frivolous things. The irony wasn't lost on Ijeohma. Emeka had just bought a new custom tuxedo. Last month, he'd purchased an expensive watch. For the month before, new golf clubs. But a dress for her? Frivolous. You're the one who insisted I come, Ijeohma said, her voice barely steady. Because I didn't have a choice, Emeka snapped. If it was up to me, you'd stay home. But I need to look like a family man for the CEO, and that requires you being there. So just try not to embarrass me too badly, okay? She almost said it then. Almost told him she wasn't going. Almost stood up for herself. But marriage was for better or worse, right? And this was just the worst part. Eventually, they'd get back to better. That's what she told herself as she picked up her small worn handbag, the one with the broken clasp she'd been meaning to replace for a year. That's what she told herself as Emeka called from the living room. Ijeohma, hurry up. I don't want to be late. That's what she told herself as they walked to the car in silence. Emeka 3 steps ahead, not holding her hand, not slowing down for her to keep up in her scuffed heels. This was marriage, for better or worse, even when worse felt like it might kill her. They rode in silence for 20 minutes. Emeka drove with one hand, checking his phone with the other, texting someone. Probably work. Always work. Ijeohma looked out the window at Lagos passing by. The street vendors closing their stalls for the evening. The crowds at bus stops. The ordinary people living ordinary lives. She missed being ordinary. She missed having friends. She missed being someone other than Emeka Okafor's disappointing wife. When we get there, Emeka said suddenly, his eyes still on his phone, I need you to understand something. Ijeohma waited. Mr. Adeyemi is old-fashioned, traditional. He believes in family values, wives supporting their husbands, all that conservative nonsense. So when you meet him, you smile, you nod, you say nice things about me and our marriage. You make me look good. Can you do that? What do I say if he asks what I do? Ijeohma asked quietly. Tell him you're a homemaker. Don't mention that you've been in school for 3 years. Don't mention that you're between jobs. That sounds bad. Just say you support my career by managing our home. Ijeohma swallowed hard. Is that what you tell people? That I'm a homemaker? It's better than the truth, Emeka muttered. And what is the truth, Emeka, according to you? He finally looked at her, his expression cold. The truth is that you've been coasting for 3 years. The truth is that while I'm building a career and earning money and actually contributing to our future, you're chasing a degree that leads nowhere and complaining about broken laptops. He turned back to the road. But Mr. Adeyemi doesn't need to know that. He just needs to think I have a stable home life, a supportive wife. That's what you're there for tonight. So I'm a prop, she said softly. That's all I am to you, a prop to make you look good. You're my wife, Emeka said. It's your job to make me look good. They pulled up to the Eco Hotel. The valet opened Emeka's door first. A different valet walked around to open Ijeohma's door. Welcome to the Thornhill Industries Gala, the valet said with a smile. Ijeohma stepped out into the golden light spilling from the hotel entrance into the world of wealth and power and success. And she had never felt more invisible. The ballroom was more beautiful than anything Ijeohma had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. The tables were draped in ivory silk. Centerpieces of white roses and golden branches created small forests on each table. The people were even more intimidating than the decor. Women in designer gowns that cost more than Ijeohma's rent. Men in tuxedos that fit like second skins. Jewelry that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. And Ijeohma in her 5-year-old altered dress and scuffed shoes. Remember what we discussed, Emeka muttered as they entered. Then he was gone, pulled away by a colleague, leaving Ijeohma standing alone just inside the entrance. She clutched her small handbag tighter, her knuckles white. Ijeohma, She turned to see Ijeohma pushing through the crowd. Ijeohma, her former colleague from before she'd left work to care for Emeka's mother. Ijeohma, the only person from Emeka's world who still treated her like a human being. You made it, Ijeohma said, giving her a quick hug. I was worried you wouldn't come. Emeka hasn't brought you to anything in forever. He needed me here tonight, Ijeohma said quietly, for the CEO. Ijeohma's expression changed pity, quickly hidden. She knew. Everyone in Emeka's department probably knew. Ijeohma Okafor, the wife who existed only when she was useful. Well, I'm glad you're here, Ijeohma said firmly. Come on, let's get you some champagne. For these events are brutal without alcohol. They started walking toward the bar. Ijeohma tried not to notice the glances, the whispers. Two women in gowns that probably cost 10,000 naira each, looking at her dress and then exchanging knowing looks. She pretended not to see. They were halfway across the ballroom when Emeka's voice cut through the ambient noise of conversation and music. His voice was loud, too loud, the kind of loud that meant he'd already had several drinks. No, you don't understand. Ijeohma stopped walking. So did Ijeohma. Emeka, come on, man. That was Tunde's voice, one of Emeka's colleagues. You don't understand what I'm saying. Emeka's voice got louder. Some women are just naturally incapable of understanding ambition. It's like it's not in their DNA or something. Ijeohma grabbed Ijeohma's arm. Well, let's go the other way. Let's just get that drink and... But Ijeohma couldn't move. She stood frozen, watching Emeka hold court with a group of 6 or 7 executives about 20 feet away. His face was flushed, his tie was loosened, his jacket was off. He was drunk, and when Emeka got drunk, he got mean. I'm telling you, Emeka continued, his voice carrying across the space between them. The biggest mistake a man can make is marrying a woman with no ambition, no drive, no understanding of what it takes to be successful in this world. That's harsh, man, Tunde said, clearly uncomfortable. Harsh? It's reality. Emeka laughed. That ugly laugh he only did when he was drunk and angry. Look around this room. You see these successful men? Every single one of them will tell you the same thing I'm about to tell you. He paused for effect, taking a long drink of whiskey.
A man's success is directly tied to whether he has dead weight at home dragging him down or a partner pushing him forward.
Emeka, Jennifer, a female executive Ijeohma vaguely recognized, tried to interrupt. Maybe we should...
What?
Emeka demanded.
Change the subject? Why? Because it makes people uncomfortable? Good. People should be uncomfortable. The truth usually makes people uncomfortable.
Ijeohma knew she should leave, should turn around and walk away, should leave this ballroom and this hotel and this marriage. But her feet wouldn't move. You want to know what kills a man's potential? Emeka was on a roll now, feeding off his audience. A wife who sits at home all day, contributes nothing to the household, and then has the audacity to complain when he works long hours. Several people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned in, intrigued by the spectacle. Take my situation, for example, Emeka said, and Ijeohma's heart stopped. No, please, God, no. My wife, Emeka continued, oblivious to Ijeohma standing 20 feet away. And I use that term loosely at this point, hasn't worked in 3 years. 3 whole years. Do you know what her excuse is? Emeka asked the crowd. Someone, Ijeohma couldn't see who, asked. What? She's working on herself, Emeka said in a high-pitched mocking voice, nothing like Ijeohma's actual voice. She's taken online classes for 3 years. For a degree she'll probably never finish, because actually finishing would mean she'd have to stop making excuses and get a real job. That's rough, man, someone said sympathetically. Rough? Emeka laughed bitterly. I'll tell you what's rough. Today, I closed a 20 million naira deal. 20 million. I negotiated for 6 hours straight. I convinced the client to triple their initial investment. I brought home a commission most people won't see in 5 years. He paused, letting that sink in. You know what my wife did today? Silence. Nothing, Emeka answered his own question. Actually, I take that back. She did less than nothing, because at least if she did nothing, the house would stay clean. But no, I came home last week and found dishes in the sink from breakfast, not washed, not rinsed. I just sitting there like magic fairies were going to clean them. What Emeka didn't mention, what he would never mention, was that those dishes were his, from his breakfast that he made and left everywhere. The mess was his clothes on the floor, his wet towels on the furniture, his newspapers scattered across the living room. The house was messy because he was messy, and Ijeohma had been sick with food poisoning that day. Unable to keep anything down, unable to get off the bathroom floor. But Emeka didn't tell them that part. I asked her what she'd been doing all day, Emeka continued. You know what she said? She said she was busy. Emeka nearly shouted the word. Busy. Busy doing what? Busy sitting on the couch watching Netflix while pretending to read textbooks. They busy scrolling through Instagram looking at other people's successful lives while doing absolutely nothing with her own. Maybe she's struggling, Jennifer suggested quietly, trying to inject some compassion. Some people go through depression. She's not depressed, Emeka cut her off sharply. She's lazy. There's a difference. You want to know what depression looks like? Depression is me waking up at 5 a.m. every single morning to go to a job I sometimes hate, so I can fund her existence while she sleeps until noon. Depression is working 60-hour weeks, missing time with friends, sacrificing my weekends, all so she can have a roof over her head and food in her fridge while contributing zero, nothing, not a single naira, not a single contribution. People in the crowd were starting to look around now. This was getting uncomfortable, for this was getting mean, but Emeka was too drunk and too angry to stop. My mother warned me, he said, shaking his head like a man who'd been grievously wronged. My mother sat me down before we got married and said, son, make sure you marry a woman who understands hard work, a woman who knows the value of money, a woman who will stand beside you, not behind you, with her hand out, constantly asking for more. He took another long drink of whiskey. But did I listen? No. I was in love. The way he said in love, like it was a disease he'd caught and barely survived, made Ijeohma's stomach turn. I thought she was smart, Emeka continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. She had a degree. She'd worked before. I thought, she'll find her path. She'll contribute. We'll build this life together. He laughed bitterly. You know what she found? The couch. That's what she found. She found a comfortable spot on our couch. Sorry, my couch. Since I'm the one who paid for it, and she's been there ever since, like it's her full-time job. Tonda put his hand on Emeka's shoulder. Emeka, man, I don't think you know what the worst part is. Emeka shrugged off Tunde's hand, too far gone to stop now. It's not even the laziness. I could handle laziness. What I can't handle is the entitlement. She actually gets upset when I come home late. Emeka's voice was incredulous. Can you believe that? I'm out there working, earning money, paying bills, building a future, and she's upset that I'm not home for dinner that she probably didn't even cook. He looked around at his audience, seeking validation. Last month, she had the absolute audacity to ask me if we could go on vacation. A vacation! Several people in the crowd chuckled, drawn into Emeka's narrative. I looked at her And I said, vacation from what? You'd have to actually work to need a vacation from work. Do you know what she did? She cried, Emeka said, shaking his head in disbelief. She actually cried. Like I'm the bad guy for pointing out basic logic. Like I'm supposed to apologize for speaking the truth. Jennifer tried again. Emeka, that's enough. No, there's more. Emeka was fully drunk now, his filter completely gone, saying things he normally had the sense to keep hidden. You want to hear the absolute worst part of all this? He paused, looking around at his audience. We've been married 5 years, he said, letting the number hang in the air. 5 whole years. And you know what we don't have? Children, Emeka said. We don't have children, and you know why we don't have children? Emeka, don't! Jennifer's voice was sharp now, sensing where this was going. But Emeka was too far gone to stop. Because she's not ready, he said, making air quotes with his fingers. Every time I bring it up, it's not the right time, or I want to finish school first, or I want to get my career started first. Career? What career? The imaginary career she's been preparing for 3 years while accomplishing absolutely nothing? He laughed, that ugly, cruel laugh again. My mother asks me all the time, Emeka, when are you giving me grandchildren? Your brother already has 2. You know what I have to tell her? Sorry, Mama. My wife is too busy being lazy to give you grandchildren. Or she's too busy doing nothing to create a family. What Emeka didn't say, what he would never ever say in front of his colleagues, was that Ijeohma had been pregnant twice. The first time 2 years ago, she'd miscarried at 8 weeks. She'd woken up in the middle of the night bleeding, terrified, alone, because Emeka was at a work dinner he couldn't miss. By the time he got home 3 hours later, she'd lost the baby. He told her to get over it quickly because he couldn't handle emotional women and had an important presentation in the morning. The second time, last year, she'd made it to 12 weeks. They'd heard the heartbeat, seen the ultrasound. Ijeohma had allowed herself to hope. Then at 12 weeks and 3 days, the heartbeat stopped. Emeka had gone back to work the next day while Ijeohma had the procedure alone. When she'd called him crying from the clinic, he'd sighed and said, Ijeohma, I'm in a meeting. Can this wait? Both times he'd blamed her body for not being able to do the one thing women are supposed to be able to do naturally. And now he was using her childlessness, her grief as ammunition to humiliate her in front of strangers. But you know what the final insult is? Emeka pulled out his phone, and Ijeohma's blood ran cold. No, not that. Please, God, not that. I pay for everything, Emeka said, unlocking his phone. Her food, her clothes, her toiletries, her phone bill, her useless online classes. Every single naira comes from ME. And last week, she had the nerve to ask me for money. He pulled up his photos and started showing his phone to the people around him. You want to know what for? Emeka asked, his voice dripping with contempt. Shoes, he said. She wanted money for shoes because hers are falling apart. Ijeohma knew that photo. She'd sent it to Emeka 2 weeks ago. Her only pair of work-appropriate shoes had finally broken, the sole separating from the upper, the heel wobbling dangerously. She'd been asking if they could afford a new pair. Not expensive designer shoes, just something presentable for when she finally got a job interview. His text response had been, maybe if you actually worked like an adult, you could buy your own shoes instead of begging for handouts. Look at this, Emeka was saying now. It's showing the photo of Ijeohma's broken shoes to his colleagues. Look at them. They're completely falling apart. And instead of, I don't know, getting a job so she can afford to buy her own shoes like an adult, she wants me to give her more money. Like, I'm her father instead of her husband, Emeka continued. Like, it's my job to buy her things because she's too lazy to earn her own money. That's enough, Mr. Okafor. The voice cut through the room like a blade. Mr. Adeyemi, the CEO of Thornhill Industries, stood at the edge of the group. At 65, he was an imposing man, tall, grey-haired, with the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet when he entered them. And he looked absolutely disgusted. Sir, Emeka straightened up immediately, trying to look sober, professional. Mr. Adeyemi, I didn't see you there. I was just having a conversation with the guys. We were just talking. You know how it is. I know exactly how it is, Mr. Adeyemi said coldly. I heard every word you just said about your wife. Every single word. Sir, it's not. I didn't mean it was just. Where is she? Mr. Adeyemi demanded. Where is your wife right now, Mr. Okafor? Emeka's face went from pale to grey. I don't know. She's around somewhere, probably getting a drink, or... She's standing right there, Mr. Adeyemi said, pointing directly at Ijeohma. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. 300 pairs of eyes turned to Ijeohma. She stood there in her 5-year-old altered dress and scuffed shoes, her cheap handbag clutched in her white, knuckled hands, her carefully applied makeup smeared with tears. She looked small, broken, humiliated, and every single person in that room knew they'd just witnessed her husband systematically destroy her in public. Emeka's mouth opened and closed. His face went from grey to green. Ijeohma, he said, his voice suddenly sober. I didn't know you were there. I was just joking around. You know how guys talk. I didn't mean... You meant every word, Ijeohma said quietly. Her voice was soft, but in the absolute silence of the ballroom it carried. You're right, she continued, taking one step forward. You're absolutely right, Emeka. About all of it. Emeka blinked, confused. What? I haven't been contributing. Not to this marriage, not to your life. You're right. She reached into her small handbag with trembling hands and pulled out her wedding ring. The simple gold band they'd chosen together when they were broke university students. When Emeka had held her hand and promised to love her in sickness and health, for better or worse, for richer or poorer. When he'd promised to be her partner, not her judge. I've been trying to be your wife, Ijeohma said, her voice getting stronger even as tears continued to fall. But you don't want a wife. You want something else. Something I can't be. Ijeohma, you're making a scene, Emeka hissed, acutely aware that 300 people were watching. Can we please discuss this at home, in private? Really? At home? Ijeohma let out a broken laugh.
You mean the home where I sit on the couch doing nothing all day? The home? You told them I haven't worked in 3 years.
Emeka took a step
You
back.
didn't tell them why. Should I tell them, Emeka? Should I tell everyone why I left my job? Should I tell them I spent the first 2 years of our marriage taking care of your mother when she had cancer?
Ijeohma, stop.
Bathing her, feeding her, changing her adult diapers, holding her hand through chemotherapy while you were too busy with your career? Should I tell them that your mother died in my arms?
Ijeohma continued, her voice breaking. That her last words were, thank you for being the daughter I never had. That she was thanking me while you were at a client dinner you couldn't miss. You told them I take online classes as an excuse to be lazy. Ijeohma said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Yes, you didn't tell them I'm getting my MBA, that I have a 3.9 GPA, that I study from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. every night, because that's the only time you're not demanding I do something for you. She wiped her eyes again, smearing her mascara across her cheeks. You told them I asked you for vacation money. You didn't tell them I haven't left Lagos in 5 years, that I haven't seen my own mother since our wedding because you said we couldn't afford to send me home. But you could afford new golf clubs last month, and a new watch, and a custom tuxedo for tonight. You told them I asked for money for shoes. Ijeohma's voice cracked completely now. You showed them my broken shoes and everyone laughed. You didn't tell them that I haven't bought myself anything, not clothes, not shoes, nothing in 2 years. Whilst that every single naira you give me goes to groceries or household bills or your dry cleaning. She held up the wedding rings again, her hand shaking. And you told them I won't give you children, she whispered. The ballroom was so silent you could hear her breathing. You didn't tell them about the 2 babies we lost, Ijeohma said, her voice barely audible. About how I miscarried the first one alone while you were at office drinks. About how I begged you to come home and you said you couldn't leave early because you were networking. You didn't tell them about the second baby, Ijeohma continued. How we heard the heartbeat at 10 weeks. How excited I was. How I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this would fix us. Make you love me again. Tears were streaming down her face now, but her voice stayed steady. Diane, you didn't tell them that when the heartbeat stopped at 12 weeks, you went back to work the next day. That when I called you crying from the clinic where they were removing our dead baby from my body, you sighed and asked if it could wait because you were in a meeting. You didn't tell them that you blamed me, Ijeohma said. That you said my body couldn't do the one thing women are supposed to be able to do naturally. That you made me feel broken. She placed the wedding ring on the nearest table with a soft click that echoed in the silence. You're right, Emeka, she said. I am lazy. I am worthless. I am a burden. I am all those things. To you, she picked up her small handbag. But that's the thing I finally understand, she continued. It doesn't matter what I do. Doesn't matter how hard I try. I will never be enough for you because you don't see me as a person. You see me as a failure, as something to be ashamed of. Mr. Adeyemi stepped forward. Mrs. Okafor, please, it's Miss Okoro, Ijeohma corrected quietly. I'm done being an Okafor. She looked at Emeka one last time. I loved you, she said softly. Even when you made it impossible, I loved you. Even when you were cruel, even when you humiliated me, even when you blamed me for things that weren't my fault. I loved you. But I can't love someone who hates me, Ijeohma said. And Emeka, you hate me. Maybe you have for a long time. Maybe you always did. She straightened her shoulders. Well, congratulations. You finally got what you wanted. You told 300 people exactly how terrible I am. How lazy, how worthless, how much of a burden. For you humiliated me in front of your entire company, in front of the CEO, in front of strangers who will never forget this moment. I hope it was worth it, Ijeohma said, because you will never get the chance to hurt me again. And then Ijeohma Okoro, no longer Ijeohma Okafor, walked through that ballroom with her head held high. She didn't run, didn't hide her face, didn't let anyone see her fall apart. She walked past 300 silent witnesses, past the man who just destroyed her, past the life she'd tried so desperately to build. She walked with dignity, with Ijeohma, the kind that had nothing to do with her name and everything to do with her spirit. Because even in her humiliation, even in her pain, even in her absolute devastation, Ijeohma Okoro had more dignity than Emeka Okafor would ever possess. The ballroom doors closed behind her with a soft click. Emeka stood there, suddenly understanding what he'd done. The CEO was staring at him with cold fury. His colleagues were stepping away from him like he had a disease. Jennifer was shaking her head. And 300 people had just watched him reveal himself to be exactly what he was. A cruel man who destroyed the person who loved him most. Mr. Adeyemi's voice cut through the silence like ice. My office, Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Then the CEO turned and walked away. The crowd began to whisper, to pull out phones, to spread the story. And Emeka realized that in trying to make himself look successful, he'd revealed himself to be a failure at the only thing that truly mattered, being a decent human being. If you've ever felt invisible, unappreciated, or humiliated by someone who promised to love you, tell us in the comments. Emeka stood in Mr. Adeyemi's office, his palms sweating. The video had gone viral, 3 million views by Sunday night. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Mr. Adeyemi didn't invite him to sit. Do you know what I built this company on, Mr. Okafor? Sir, I respect, the CEO interrupted. Respect for our clients, our employees, our families. How a man treats his family shows how he'll treat everything else. What you did Saturday was the most disgraceful display I've witnessed in 40 years. You humiliated your wife, a woman who sacrificed her career to care for your dying mother, in front of 300 people. Sir, I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly. The alcohol just gave you permission to say what you always thought, Mr. Adeyemi said. I should fire you right now. My wife watched that video. She cried for your wife. She asked how I could employ such a man. However, the CEO continued, you're a talented businessman. That 20 million deal was impressive. So you get one chance. One. He outlined the terms. Public apology, counseling, donation to women's shelter in Ijeohma's name, the promotion to senior vice president, gone. Maybe in 2 years if you prove you've changed, Mr. Adeyemi said. Now get out. He still had his job, but he'd lost everything else that mattered. And somewhere in Lagos, Ijeohma was gone. Forever. Ijeohma sat on the floor of her cramped studio apartment, surrounded by textbooks and papers. The fan rattled overhead, doing nothing to cool the humid night air. It was 3 a.m. She'd been studying for 6 hours. Her phone buzzed. Osmandi, another message from Emeka. Come home. I'm sorry. We can fix this. But he wasn't sorry. Not really. And there was nothing left to fix. 3-year employment gap. I was full-time caregiver for my mother-in-law during her cancer treatment. I see. We're looking for someone with more recent experience. 40 naira, ma. Ijeohma counted the exact change. Nothing left for tomorrow's breakfast. When are you coming home, Gracie? I miss you. Soon, Mama. I promise. Your brother's school fees. I'm sorry, Mama. I don't have anything to send. Maybe next month. Her mother's disappointed silence hurt worse than words. Ijeohma was buying rice when a woman's voice cut through the aisle. Aren't you the lazy wife from the video? Ijeohma froze. Oh, you are. The woman's voice got louder. My husband showed me that video. I'd had 3 years without working, asking your husband for shoe money. The audacity. Other shoppers turned to look. Some pulled out phones. You should be ashamed, the woman continued. Women like you give the rest of us a bad name, lazy, entitled, sitting at home while your husband works himself to death. You don't know the whole story, Ijeohma whispered, tears starting. I know enough. You're a parasite. You took advantage of a good man. You're exactly what he said, a lazy wife who got what she deserved. My husband and I watched that video together, the woman went on, enjoying Ijeohma's pain. He said, if I ever became like you, he'd leave me, and he'd be right. Ijeohma couldn't speak, couldn't defend herself. The words stuck. Look at you, the woman sneered. Can't even afford decent groceries. That's what happens when you're too lazy to work. She walked away laughing, leaving Ijeohma surrounded by staring strangers. She sat in her car for 2 hours crying. The woman's words echoing. Lazy wife? Parasite. Deserved it. This wasn't the first time. The video made her face public, made her shame national, made her a symbol of everything people hated about lazy women. Everywhere she went, someone recognized her, judged her, reminded her. Is this who she was forever? The lazy wife from the viral video? Or could she become something else? The answer would shock everyone. A knock startled her. Ijeohma pushed inside with food. I knew you'd be awake. Have you eaten? I had bread. Bread isn't food. Ijeohma unpacked jollof rice. Eat. Then we're talking about this self-destructive spiral. I'm not self-destructive. I am focused. You're destroying yourself, Ijeohma exploded. You've lost weight. You look sick. You're working 3 jobs, barely making rent. For what? For my degree, for my future. You have a degree. Get a job now. And prove Emeka right. Ijeohma's voice was sharp. Prove I'm just some lazy woman who finally got off the couch. That everything he said was true? The video went viral, Ijeohma. 3 million views. 3 million people who think I'm exactly what he said. She showed Ijeohma the comments. She probably was lazy. Why else would he be so angry? Gold digger got exposed. She must have had bad parenting. My man would never talk about me like that unless I deserved it. These people don't know you, Ijeohma said fiercely. But they think they do, Ijeohma replied. Until I become someone undeniable, or someone so successful those words can't stick. I'm just the lazy wife from that video. Forever. So, yes, I'm working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, living in a box, eating once a day, because the alternative is accepting Emeka was right, and I'd rather die. Ijeohma pulled her into a hug. 6 months of holding it together collapsed in great, heaving sobs. I miss him, Ijeohma confessed. God help me, even after everything, I miss my husband. That's trauma, Ijeohma said gently. Not love. What's the difference? Love doesn't leave you crying at 3 a.m., too exhausted to eat. Love doesn't make you feel like you have to prove your worth every second. Love doesn't humiliate you. What if he's right, though? What if I really am? Stop. Ijeohma gripped her shoulders. You cared for a dying woman for 2 years with love. You're getting an MBA with a 3.9 GPA while working 3 jobs. You survived 2 miscarriages alone. You're living in poverty rather than accept money from a man who destroyed you. She forced Ijeohma to meet her eyes. You are not lazy. You are not worthless. You are a woman who's been broken down by someone who should have built you up. And now you're rebuilding yourself, piece by piece. Then why does it hurt so much? Because healing always hurts more than staying broken. Because growth is painful. Because you're doing the hard thing. Now, eat. You can't build an empire on an empty stomach. And Ijeohma, you're going to build an empire. That man tried to bury you. She smiled. He doesn't know he planted a seed. Months passed by. A lot had changed. Not very fast, but gradually. Ijeohma's hands weren't shaking anymore, not like they used to. Market consolidation in Nigeria's mid-tier corporate sector is happening fast, she said. her voice steady. But acquisition firms are missing a critical opportunity. She clicked to her next slide. Companies valued between 20 and 100 million naira are being ignored. Too big for angel investors, too small for major equity firms. They struggle, decline, and fold, taking jobs and value with them. Mr. Okonjo, the skeptical investor in the expensive suit, interrupted. And you think you can succeed where larger firms haven't bothered? They haven't bothered because they see numbers, Ijeohma said simply. I see people, potential. I've analyzed 50 companies in this bracket. 37 are failing not because of their business model, but because of poor management or outdated practices. She clicked through her case study. This catering company, Mama Put Deluxe, excellent food, loyal customers, but the owner is 65 and managing everything on paper. No online presence, no delivery system. They're turning away corporate clients. Your solution? Acquire for 8 million naira, invest 2 million in digitization, keep Mama Put as brand face, scale to corporate contracts in 6 months, franchise in 12, sell to a larger company for 30 to 40 million in 18 months. She showed 3 more cases, detailed financials, risk assessments, exit strategies. This isn't charity, Ijeohma said. This is smart business. Ms. Okoro, Mrs. Adwell spoke for the first time. Your analysis is impressive, but you have no track record, no acquisition experience. Why should we give you 10 million naira based on a presentation? Ijeohma had prepared for this, had lived this moment in her mind 1,000 times. You're right, she said. I have no track record, but I have something better. She projected an email onto the screen. 3 months ago, I approached Mama Put with a proposal. Free consulting. I'd organize their operations, build their online presence, create systems. In exchange, they'd give me data and let me prove my model works. She clicked to a spreadsheet. In 3 months, we increased their monthly revenue by 47%. Customer retention went from 60 to 89%. They're getting corporate contracts they would have turned away. And Mama Put agreed, if I secure funding, she'll sell me 60% for 8 million naira. I have 3 more similar deals ready to close, Ijeohma continued. Companies waiting for me to acquire them. I don't have theoretical experience. I have practical experience, and I have deals ready the moment I have capital. Mrs. Adewale smiled, really smiled. You remind me of myself 30 years ago, she said. Hungry, strategic, underestimated. She looked at the other investors. I'm in for 3 million naira. 2 million, Mr. Okonjo added. One by one, they committed. 9.5 million naira. Ijeohma held it together until she reached the hallway. Then her legs gave out and she slid down the wall. Ijeohma rushed from the lobby. Well, 9.5 million, Ijeohma whispered. They gave me 9.5 million. And she burst into tears, relief, joy, overwhelming possibility. Within 1 to 3 months, she was already making impeccable moves. You saved my life's work, Mama Put said. Ijeohma point, acquisitions, her name, her vision. In 4 to 6 months, revenue tripled. 20 employees, corporate contracts with 3 banks. She made her second acquisition, a logistics firm, Swift Deliveries. Drowning in debt, Ijeohma restructured everything. Started realizing profit in 3 months. In month 7 to 12, reporters were already making her a person of interest. As many published about her, she was on a business magazine Cove. Ijeohma Okoro, 28, is disrupting Nigeria's acquisition space with compassionate capitalism. She doesn't just buy companies, she resurrects them. Her team called her boss with respect, not fear. Within the next 5 months, Ijeohma had acquired a textile company, no, an auto parts distributor, a tech startup, each profitable within 6 months. But success came with a price. Ijeohma hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in over a year. Even now, with everything she'd built, her mind wouldn't stop racing. Tomorrow's meetings, the new acquisition, her team's performance, always thinking, always working, always proving. Even success couldn't heal some wounds. While Ijeohma rose, Emeka stagnated, still the same position, still living under the shadow of that viral video, still being reminded he was on thin ice. He searched Ijeohma's name online. Nothing. She'd vanished. Good, he thought. She's probably still struggling, still failing. He had no idea. The emergency board meeting had everyone confused. 2 hours notice, mandatory attendance. Emeka sat annoyed. The CEO was retiring. Everyone knew that. Why the drama? Mr. Adeyemi stood at the head of the table. 3 years ago, Thornhill was valued at 2 billion naira. Today, 2.3. Steady, but not spectacular. I've spent 40 years building this company, Adeyemi continued. I want to leave it with someone who understands not just business, but integrity, transformation. Emeka barely paid attention. So I'm pleased to announce I'm selling 51% of Thornhill Industries to Ijeohma Point Acquisitions, effective immediately. Emeka's head snapped up. Ijeohma Point. He'd heard that name recently. And your new CEO is... The boardroom doors opened. Miss Ijeohma Okoro. Miss Ijeohma Okoro. Ijeohma. His Ijeohma. No, she was not his anymore. Good afternoon, Ijeohma said, her voice calm and authoritative. I look forward to working with all of you. Her eyes swept the room, landed on Emeka for exactly 1 second. No emotion, no recognition, like he was nobody. His lazy, worthless, good-for-nothing wife was his boss now. Emeka stood outside Ijeohma's office, sweating through his shirt. His appointment, 9 a.m. sharp. He knocked. Come in, Mr. Okafor. Mr. Okafor. Not Emeka. Sit. He sat. She read for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years, then closed the file and looked at him. Your performance reviews are adequate, Ijeohma said, professional and detached. Your numbers have been stagnant for 2 years. No major deals since the one you closed 3 years ago. The market has been challenging. The market has been excellent, Ijeohma interrupted. Your colleagues have thrived. You haven't. Why? He couldn't speak. I'll tell you why, Ijeohma leaned back. You're stuck, still living in the past, still thinking about that gala. Ijeohma, CEO Okoro, she corrected coldly. In this office, you call me CEO Okoro. The words hit like a slap. CEO Okoro, he said, tasting ash. I'm sorry for everything. I was cruel. I was wrong. I destroyed you. You didn't destroy me, Ijeohma said simply. You tried, but you failed. Do you know what you actually did that night, Emeka? You set me free. You showed me who you really were. You showed me I'd been wasting my life trying to please a man who would never see my worth. She turned back. So, thank you. Thank you for calling me lazy. Thank you for showing me that the only person I needed to prove anything to was myself. Now, let's talk about your future here. Emeka's heart stopped. Are you firing me? Ijeohma considered him. No, she said, finally. I'm not you, Emeka. I don't destroy people for satisfaction. Relief flooded his face. But I don't keep dead weight either, Ijeohma continued. You have 6 months. Prove you can still be the businessman you used to be. Close deals. Innovate. Contribute. If you succeed, you keep your job. If you fail, you leave with good references and 6 months severance. Fair. That's more than fair, Emeka whispered. I know. Ijeohma picked up another file, dismissing him. That's the difference between us. When you had power, you crushed. Now that I have power, I build. She looked up once more. Don't waste this chance. And, Emeka, never call a woman lazy unless you've walked even one day in her shoes. Yes, CEO Okoro. Dismissed. The company had its best quarter in 5 years. Ijeohma's leadership transformed everything. None of this would be possible without this incredible team, Ijeohma said. Every person here contributed to our success. Her eyes found Emeka in the crowd. He'd actually done it, closed 2 major deals, proved himself. He was staying, but he was different, quieter, humbler. He'd started therapy, started treating colleagues with respect. CEO Okoro, could I have a moment? Ijeohma nodded, stepping aside. I wanted to say, I'm grateful for the chance you gave me, for not destroying me when you could have, for being better than I ever was. I didn't do it for you, Emeka, Ijeohma said gently. I did it for me, to prove success hadn't made me cruel, that I could have power without abusing it. I know. Emeka looked down. For what it's worth, I see you now. Everything you were, everything you are. And I'm sorry I was too blind before. I appreciate that, Ijeohma said. But Emeka, I don't need you to see me anymore. I see myself. And that's enough. She walked away, joining Ijeohma and her team, laughing, celebrating. Ijeohma sat on her balcony overlooking Lagos. Her phone showed messages from her mother, her team, all proud. But for the first time in 2 years, Ijeohma felt tired. Good tired, accomplished tired. She'd proven them all wrong. The viral video was overshadowed by articles about her success. Ijeohma Okoro, the CEO who rose from humiliation to triumph. But more importantly, she'd proven herself right. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't worthless. She wasn't a burden. She was brilliant. She was strong. She was enough. She was learning to rest now, learning that she didn't have to prove herself every second. She'd won, and she'd healed. Ijeohma Okoro built Ijeohma Point Acquisitions into a 2 billion naira empire. She never remarried, but she never needed to. She had her work, her team, her peace. She became known as the CEO who led with compassion and strength. Emeka remained at Thornhill for 3 more years before moving to a smaller firm. He never rose to his dreams. He eventually remarried, but different. Kinda. The humiliation of becoming his ex-wife's employee changed him. They say the best revenge is success. But Ijeohma learned something deeper. The best revenge is becoming so fulfilled that revenge no longer matters. Emeka tried to bury her, and he didn't know he was planting a seed, and from that seed grew a queen. Let us know in the comment if this inspired you. Share with every woman who needs to know their lowest moment isn't their final chapter. Never humiliate your partner. Success is the best response to doubt. How you treat people with power reveals your character. Marriage is partnership, not ownership. A person's worth isn't measured by job title. Kindness in victory is more powerful than cruelty and revenge. Ijeohma proved you don't have to become your abuser to defeat them. You just have to become yourself, unapologetically, powerfully, completely.